10 years ago, I went to the Cannes Film Festival, and there was one movie I had no interest in seeing while I was there, and that was Pete Docter's film Inside Out, which premiered out of competition. I didn't want to see it for two reasons. One, it was being released in June in the US, so I'd be able to see it when I got home from the festival. And two, to be honest, I didn't think the movie looked good. I don't know what it was about it, but I just really didn't think I was going to like this one. I didn't think the concept would work. I didn't think any of the teasers or trailers I saw looked good. I just had no interest in it. And at this point, I had seen all the other Pixar movies, so I'm really not sure why my expectations for this one were so incredibly low. But while I was at Cannes, someone felt bad for me because I hadn't been to any screenings in the Lumiere Theater yet because those required tickets. I was just going to whatever screenings I could get into with my badge. So this person gave me a ticket for Inside Out, and I wasn't going to say no to that. So I went to the screening, and I ended up loving this movie so much, it immediately became my favorite Pixar film. Although now it's basically tied with Soul, but that's a topic for a different day. I remember leaving the theater and saying, this is the movie I needed when I was younger. And even now, if someone hits me with the, if you could travel back in time and give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? I always think about how I'd bring her a copy of Inside Out. What's funny is that I started preparing to make this video a while ago, but then I got distracted and it fell by the wayside. And then yesterday I got a notification that 10 years ago, my friend Gabe left this comment on my Facebook. For context, Gabe and I met because we were working for a film festival where I was writing a lot of reviews. He commented sharing Grace Randolph's review for Inside Out and said, you should start your own web series where you review films. You're a better critic than she is, which is totally a matter of opinion. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Grace Randolph. Clearly, there's a reason why so many people know who she is and hardly anyone knows who I am. And I don't love this idea of pitting women against each other and acting like something's a competition, but seeing the notification about this comment felt kind of surreal for three reasons. One, all these years later, I actually ended up making videos where I talk about movies. Two, the link he shared was Grace's review of Inside Out, and I happened to be working on this video about Inside Out. Although this isn't a review video, but it's still a weird coincidence. And three, sadly, Gabe passed away last year. I don't think he ever found out I started making videos because I never shared them on Facebook and didn't really do much to promote them on my personal Instagram account. But I wish he were still here so I could tag him in this one and he could tell me I told you so. But back to the topic at hand. Spoiler warning for Pete Docter's 2015 film Inside Out. I can actually sum up why this movie was life-changing for me in one sentence, but evidently I like to ramble. For context, in case anyone who's never seen this movie is watching this despite the spoiler warning, Inside Out is a Pixar film about an 11-year-old girl named Riley, and we see 5 of her emotions personified: joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger. And they basically work at the headquarters inside her head. I won't go into all the specific details about the plot because over 4 million people on Letterboxd have logged this movie, so I doubt there are that many people watching this who are unfamiliar with the film. But usually when I make these videos, I end up recapping the entire plot and talking about how certain aspects of it affected me. I was really impressed by the world building here and the way this movie explores the concept of memory. We see Riley's experiences turn into memories, which are stored as colored orbs to reflect the emotions associated with each memory. And then the most important memories are considered core memories, and there are 5 of those, and there are also 5 personality islands that reflect those core memories. I think this film cleverly shows how our memories change over time and how our feelings about those memories evolve. So Riley's family moves from Minnesota to San Francisco because her father gets a new job, and on her first day at her new school, one of her happy core memories is retroactively turned blue to reflect sadness because those memories that once brought her joy are now sad ones since she misses her friends and her life back in Minnesota. And the character of Joy tries to get rid of this sad core memory, and she kind of embodies this idea of toxic positivity because she refuses to let Riley feel sad. But then a struggle ensues and Joy's sadness and the core memories are sucked out of headquarters. So anger, fear, and disgust try to make new happy core memories, which does not go well. And Riley's emotional dysregulation causes her to distance herself from her loved ones, and even hockey no longer brings her joy. And eventually her personality islands start to crumble. At the time, I had never seen a family-friendly animated film tackle the topic of depression like this, so I was kind of concerned that these themes might be too complex for children, but it was also really refreshing to see, and it captures that feeling so well because a lot of people associate the idea of depression with sadness, but so much of it is apathy and loss of interest in hobbies or things that once brought you joy. And it just feels like everything is falling apart and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and you wonder how you're ever going to get through this and if you'll ever feel like yourself again. So seeing the personality islands start to crumble really captured that hopelessness. Joy and sadness memories end up in Riley's long-term memory where they meet her imaginary friend Bing Bong. Meanwhile, anger, fear, and disgust's solution is to get Riley to run away back to Minnesota. She even gets on the bus and everything. And Joy is worried all the core memories will become sad, so she abandons sadness and tries to go back to headquarters on her own. But she and Bing Bong end up falling into the memory dump where memories are eventually erased. In the memory dump, Joy finds a sad memory of Riley losing a hockey game, and she remembers how Riley's loved ones comforted her afterwards, and the memory turns from a sad one to a happy one. Up until this point, Joy acted like her job was to make sure Riley is never sad, so she was basically working against sadness. But it's in this moment that she realizes sadness actually serves a purpose. Without sadness, how can anyone know when Riley is struggling or isn't doing well emotionally and needs help? Bing Bong has a wagon rocket thing that's fueled by singing, and he and Joy try to use it to get out of the memory dump, but their collective weight is too much. So Bing Bong sacrifices himself to help Joy. And this moment makes a lot of people cry, myself included, but that's not what I loved about this movie. That's just a standard Pixar emotional moment. So Joy and Sadness reunite and make their way back to headquarters. There, Joy surprisingly gives Sadness control of the console, because if anyone is going to help Riley navigate her current state, it's going to be Sadness. She successfully gets Riley to get off the bus and return home. Joy realizes that Riley isn't going to be able to get help if no one knows she's sad, so she allows Sadness to make the core memories sad, which prompts Riley to burst into tears and tell her parents the truth. This is the moment that made this a life-changing film for me, because Riley's parents want to know what's wrong. They listen to her and they comfort her, and they tell her that they miss Minnesota too. I feel like when I was younger, it was such a common thing to tell kids to stop crying and to repeat phrases like, big kids don't cry, don't be such a crybaby, toughen up, stop being so sensitive, and so on, instead of actually asking them what's wrong. It seemed like the goal was always to get the kid to stop crying, not to try and understand why they're crying and work on a solution together or try and comfort them or anything, which is probably why now if someone asks me what's wrong or if I'm okay, I burst into tears because I'll never get used to that. But the fact that Riley's parents don't get mad at her for trying to run away or yell at her, instead they try to understand what's wrong and comfort her, it was just something I really needed to see. Sometimes you just need someone to make you feel like your emotions are valid, you know? It's so simple, but I think that was the first time I ever saw anything like that. I actually expected her to get in trouble for trying to run away. So this scene was oddly healing for me. When her parents were comforting her, it was like they were comforting my inner child too. I know it's such a simple life lesson that took me an embarrassingly long time to learn, but telling someone to stop crying only makes it worse. I know some people think it's comforting to tell someone don't cry or there's no reason to cry, but let people cry. Let people be sad. Let people process their emotions. Don't make fun of them and make them feel like there's something wrong with them for being upset. And I think yelling at someone for crying is one of the worst things you can do. I'm not a parent, so it's not my place to give parental advice, and I'd like to think parents nowadays don't do this anymore, but please, if you have a child or plan on having a child, don't tell them big girls don't cry or be a man and stop crying. In the end, Sadness and Joy work together and create a new memory that's both happy and sad, and new personality islands form as Riley accepts her new life in San Francisco and makes new friends. And headquarters now has more colorful core memories, and the console's bigger so all the emotions can work together. It's just such a great representation of how you can't have happiness without sadness. You need the two to balance each other out, and it's done in a way that I think is easy enough for kids to understand, even if some of the themes go over their heads. I don't think I was even familiar with the phrase toxic positivity when I saw this movie, and I feel like I always had this attitude of you're not allowed to be sad, you're not allowed to cry, you have to be happy. And I think this movie was really cathartic in the way it showed how it's okay to feel sad, and sometimes it can even help us. It also reminds me of one of my favorite lyrics, which is, it's not about forcing happiness, it's about not letting sadness win. And this movie perfectly shows how it's okay to feel sad, and forcing yourself to be happy and stifling your other emotions doesn't work. So yeah, the short version is this movie taught me that you're allowed to feel sad and you're allowed to cry, which I hope is something most people already know.